Hello and welcome to today's video where I'll be making the Gothic Lolita skirt by Fur Plays. When I was teasing and hyping up my Shadow Empress boots a week or so ago, the majority of people were really hoping that there'd be an item from this month's update. Obviously they weren't, so here I am today making this lovely skirt from this year's Candy Store collection. Also, do make sure you're subscribed because a lot of you aren't, and my goal is to hit 30k by the end of this year. So that's 4k in just over 2 months, which is a crazy short deadline, but if all those who actively watch my content subscribe, it should help us closer to that 30k goal. Anyway, I'll talk more boring stuff at the end of the video, but for now let's get into the topic of this video. Oh, and just like in my Shadow Empress boots video, there will be a hidden word somewhere in this video. If you find it, make a sentence in the comments using the secret word and I'll be leaving a heart on my favourite sentences. Also, more credit to those who can really hide the word and not make it obvious what the word is. Let's make the Gothic Lolita skirt now. For the first time ever in the history of me making this stuff, I already had a pattern on hand that I could use. I didn't have to create my own pattern for this, which was amazing. And here is the pattern for anyone who is curious. I ignored the pattern instructions since in the context of the actual pattern, the skirt is actually an underskirt and is only visible through the small gap in the front of the dress. So the instructions call for you to put ruffles on the front skirt panel only and have the back completely blank. Obviously, since I'm using the pattern pieces to create an actual fully on-show skirt, I'm going to make 2 front pieces instead. Now, if you've ever experienced the unfortunate task of using a brand new pattern, then you'll know the dread I went through trying to locate 5 shapes on 4 separate sheets of what is essentially tissue paper the size of bed sheets, on top of trying to get aesthetically pleasing video footage that would be quick and easy to edit through. Honestly, this was the most stressful part of it, so boom, here's all of the pattern pieces all cut out. I didn't actually buy any new materials, so this skirt was made completely with whatever I had on my shelf. I had this soft plush fabric that I used for the ruffles, though there was absolutely none left after the ruffles were cut out. Next thing to do was cut out lace for all 8 ruffle rectangles. The lace that I used can be cut down the centre to make 2 separate lace pieces, so that was a plus at least. After all the lace was cut out, I then pinned it down onto each ruffle rectangle thing, and that's how that will look like after it was all pinned and sewed. If you wondered why I sewed the lace on like that, it was so I could flip the raw edge underneath and have the lace neatly on the edge, with 1 line of thread visible on the outside. After I had all that pinned, I just did a straight stitch and that's how it looked like after. Then came sewing on all the lines. Honestly, I was too lazy to even pin down or mark the ribbon placement. I just completely freehanded it. Also, RIP to my thin white ribbon, as this skirt used it all up. And for context, I had about 9 or 10 meters of it before I started. Luckily the lines aren't on the top layer of the skirt, so I was saved a bit there. And here's how it looked before I ironed it, and here's how it looked after. Now that the ruffles were all prepared, it was time to make the skirt base. I just used some random fabric because you weren't going to see it anyway. Threw it onto the mannequin and that transition was horrific. Then we go back to the ruffles, and I attempted using a gathering foot for the first time, though it wasn't quite giving me the amount of ruffles that I wanted. I managed to gather the fabric much more by just pulling on the threads, and I put them down on the skirt base and just started positioning them and marking them where I wanted to sew them down. I went ahead and sewed each layer down, starting from the bottom and making my way to the top. Once I got to this stage, I trimmed the base skirt down. I just rounded off the top part a little more and cut off the majority of the bottom. After everything was cut, I moved on to pinning the raw edge down, ready to sew it. And moving back to the top, I got the top part of the ruffles and just started pinning that to the back of the waistline. The idea here is that the top ruffle will fold over and kind of become the waistband. After it had all been sewn in place, I moved on to actually sewing the two skirt panels together. So I put the good sides together and just started pinning them in place, making sure that all the ruffles would get caught in that seam as well. So as you can see, I'm lining it all up. After the front and back skirt panels were sewn together, it was time to install a waistband. I decided to use the edge of the top ruffles to create the hollow band thing to thread elastic through later. I did have to hand sew this part just because I didn't want the stitch to be visible or pinning the ruffles down, and because I had sewn the ruffles into the side seams, I couldn't lift them up and out of the way on the sides. Obviously with hand sewing, I have control over how many layers of fabric the needle goes through and also where it goes. I put a safety pin on the end of the elastic just to make it easier to thread through, and once it appeared again, I sewed both the ends of the elastic together and finished sewing the waistband up. So here's how the base of the skirt looks. Obviously it's not got its bustle or the bow yet, and here's how it looks with underskirts underneath it. Obviously this is how I'm going to be wearing the skirt. I'm not going to have it without the poof underneath it, so yeah, that's how it looks so far. Speaking of the bustle, here's me trying to make it whilst my rabbit goes wild, and because my rabbit's going wild I'm gonna leave most of the footage in for this clip just because she was zooming all over the place. But anyway, I started by folding the fabric. I had measured how long I wanted the bustle, and then just like how I'd measured it basically, and then I cut it out in like a semicircle shape, and that's how it looked. Yeah. I think it's funnier because it's sped up. After that, I sewed some black bias tape around the edge of the semicircle and did a zigzag stitch on the straight edge of it. It sat horribly on the skirt, so I decided to add a bit of elastic on each side so the fabric scrunched up. And I won't bore you with footage of the next part, but I basically added hook and eyes onto the bustle and skirt so that the bustle is detachable like it is in the game. Now the last thing to make was the bow. Now I'm going to go full TikTok style on this. Boom, pieces, here's them sewed, here's them flipped inside out, and here's them with the ribbon sewn on. And then now we have them in bow shape. And then we have the little like white bit in the middle of it. Wow, look, a bow attached to the skirt. Now here is the reveal you've all been waiting for. I gotta say, I am incredibly happy with how this skirt turned out. I'm also very happy that I was able to create this using just things that were taking up space on my shelf. I also like how I kind of incorporated one of the game toggles into the skirt as well. And yeah, I just really love how the skirt turned out. Obviously the top part of the skirt will probably look a bit more flattering when I'm not wearing a baggy t-shirt, but that's just what I was wearing at the time of finishing the skirt, so... But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments, leave a like, share with a friend, do whatever. Remember to subscribe and click the notification bell so you get notified as soon as these videos come out. If you'd like the chance to see my videos before they're out publicly, then do make sure you look at the channel member options. Members with the super supporter tier do get to see my more highly anticipated videos before they're public. Speaking of channel membership, shout out to my current channel members. And here's the fan art for this week. If you'd like to submit your own fan art, then make sure to join my Discord server, or if you can't, just tag me on any social media. And here is a huge reminder to not forget about my Royalloween in real life community showcase. I've only had 3 entries and I'm kinda getting scared that this video is not gonna, it's not gonna be that great if I've only got 3 entries, so save me. I think that'll be all for today. Thank you so much for watching and hopefully subscribing, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.